And welcome to those here at CalSTRS joining us for this afternoon's meeting, as well as those who are remote. I'm assuming that you are all familiar with emergency exits, with locations of restrooms, etc. Just because we're broadcasting, and I know you went through this morning, we would prefer that you wait to get a microphone and identify yourself and your district when asking any questions as we get through the program. In your packets for CalSTRS today, and you should all have them, do you? For those of you online, that the information is available through an email, I think, that we sent to you. It's available online, and remotely you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and we have staff who are here to field those questions and make sure that we get them addressed today. In your packet on the left-hand side, you'll find information pieces that are our fast facts, which is a summary of CalSTRS at a glance, a one-page summary of a presentation we made to the board earlier this year that summarized member demographics and provided some general information to our membership and to the board, and we put that report into a summarized document for your benefit. And then we also have a copy of our summary annual report, and this is summarizing the larger annual report that we produce on a regular basis, and it fulfills one of the needs that we have to provide information to our membership on the status of the system. And then finally, you have copies of the employer circulars and directives that have been issued recently. On the right-hand side of your packet, you should have today's agenda, and you should have copies of the presentations that are going to be part of today's program. So we're going to start with the legislative update and have updates then on everyone's favorite GASB from the CalSTRS perspective and our involvement. An update on our pension solution project. That's something that we are enormously excited about. A general update on direct reporting. That was an issue raised by you at an earlier meeting. And then some opportunity for discussion of credible compensation regulations, because we know that you have some questions about those regulations, employer approved edits, and then finally an opportunity for open forum and discussion. So if you have items that you'd like for us to add to that part of the agenda that you can identify now, let us know. Otherwise, we'll ask at the end of the meeting if you have any additional things that you want us to discuss, and you'll have an opportunity to identify issues for a subsequent EAC meeting. So are there any questions? And seeing none, we will go forward with our first discussion, which is a state and federal legislative update, and Marianne Ashley is here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to CalSTRS. Excuse me, glad everyone's here. So we're in the first year of a new 2-year legislative cycle, and bills are just now beginning to be introduced. There's actually 2 bills. If you pull out your goldenrod, there's only one listed, but recently another bill has been listed. The one noted on your goldenrod sheet is Senate Joint Resolution 1, and that is a resolution that urges Congress and the President to repeal the WEP and GPO offsets from the Social Security Act. So we usually have a resolution every couple of years on that, so we'll be following that as it moves forward. I believe it was Tuesday that Senator De Leon introduced a bill that would require CalPERS and CalSTRS to divest from thermal coal. So we will be bringing that one to the board. We'll be analyzing it and bringing it to the board in April for the board to take a position on, and we'll follow that as that moves through the session this year. Our sponsored bills, we have authors for all of those. They have not yet been introduced. The housekeeping bill will be carried by the Assembly PERS Committee. The membership issues cleanup bill will be carried by Assembly Member Bonilla. The investment procurement process bill will be carried by Senator Hall, and expanding the board's authority over the Chief Operating Officer and the Chief Financial Officer positions will be carried by Assembly Member Cooley. So did any of you have any questions about our sponsored legislation? I know there's been note that you wanted some more information about our legislation. Any legislative questions at all? Yes. There.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure that the questions are heard by the audience. So in the future, please raise your hand. We have people with microphones. And we can do that. And Mary Ann, can you repeat the question?
So the question is, what do we have in the housekeeping bill? There's about, I think this year there's less than 20 provisions. So generally they're conforming or clarifying technical changes. There's no policy issues contained in that. So we will be posting an analysis of it once we've completed that on our website. So if you want to look at each and every one of them offhand.
Also, Mary Ann, our mics aren't working here, so, also, when the analysis is done, which will be shortly after the bill's introduced, the exact EAC meeting will make sure it's included in the packet, so you want a copy of the analysis.
Oh, wait for a microphone, please. Oh, Dina has a question.
Veena from Orange County. Just kidding. I I thought there was a bill, PERS or STRS bill, when people have 50% of STRS job and 50% of
Right.
PERS job, like classified and certificated job. So what is the status of that bill?
That is what we're referring to as the membership issues cleanup bill. That's the one that Assembly Member Bonilla will be carrying, and the provision that you just mentioned is part of that bill. So there's three parts to that bill, and how to deal with 50-50 positions is in that bill.
Thank you.
All bills have to be introduced by February 27th, so probably around the 25th and the 26th we'll have like tons of bills being introduced. Any other questions? Oh, thank you.
Okay, our mics aren't working, but I'm want to introduce for the folks in this room that Lucy Arbuckle is going to come up and talk about GASB. And Lucy, can you introduce yourself when you get to the mics? Thank you.
Hello. I know your packet says Art Martinez, so hopefully you're not too disappointed to see me instead. I promise I'll make it as fun as Art would make it. So my name is Lucy Arbuckle, and I am the financial reporting manager, and I think some of you I've kind of already corresponded with through some of the webcasts that we've just had. So my group is in charge of preparing the financial statements and also dealing with new accounting standards that come out. So ever since the new GASB standards came out, one of our main priority really is to reach out to as many employers as possible and stakeholders to make sure we raise awareness to these new GASB changes, especially to the impact to financial reporting. And so in early January, we sent out letters to superintendents to all school districts regarding these changes, and part of that letter is also a copy of our schedule of proportionate share and then a copy of our pension expense schedule. In addition to that, in late January, we had a webinar. So I don't know if any of you were able to attend that webinar. So we were able to have a webinar, and that webinar discussed the changes to the financial reporting. It also talked about the impact to CalSTRS financial statements and impact to the employer's financial statements. That first webinar was such a success that we had to do a second one. It actually just happened last Monday. And if you guys, whoever was not able to attend, we already have the presentation and the video up in our website. So feel free to go through that and download the slides if you want and share it with your auditors too. Any questions so far on this before I move on to the second update? Okay. So the second update is that our external auditors are now starting to get busy with their employer audits. They're actually starting earlier this year as compared to last year. So if you remember last year, you didn't really start getting, or whoever was selected for audits weren't really started to get communications until like towards May or June of last year. So this year, now that they've gone through one audit cycle, they know they're prepared. Their auditing standards are now available. They have now started. They've selected actually about 100 employers again this year, so it's pretty consistent with last year. And if you haven't received an audit letter, that means you guys weren't selected for audit. At the same time, their scheduled plan is to start mid-February, so it's coming up pretty soon. So like I said, they should be able to contact you if you were selected for audit to give you a list of what they need for their audit for this year. Their plan is to get all of these employer audits wrapped up by the end of June. At the same time, they also presented during the webinar, and so some of you guys were able to ask questions relating to audit. And so, like I said, if you guys are interested in what they want to look at, their timing, it'll be nice to just go back to the webinar and look at the slides, because they also have some slides that will be helpful to you guys. So any questions so far before? Yes, ma'am.
Francis from LA County. Some of our districts that got the letter that they're going to be audited, in the letter they got refers them to a link to go in and view a listing of the contribution amounts that are reported to CalSTRS. And we've had a number of our districts call and say that the figure that's in that link, in that listing, does not match what was actually reported to CalSTRS. How was that figure arrived at?
So if they go back to the job aid, so because I think what's confusing with that is the reconciliation report is showing the media ID that was received. So those reflected on there were contributions that were received during the year and not as reported, or when you guys had reported. And so if they could go back to the job aid too, it'll explain to them what those contributions are. Because I think the confusing part there is it'll say, the report should say media ID and then a month and then the year. And a lot of employers would think that those are the date of those are the report period or service period, but those are actually dates when CalSTRS received those media IDs.
Okay, so they're going to need the county office for that, because the county office
Right.
is the one that remits and knows what the media ID means.
Right.
And so potentially there could be payrolls outside of the normal year reporting process, and that's why their totals
Exactly.
are off?
Right. So yeah, we really recommend that the school district work really, really closely with the county, especially if the county is the one that's submitting all those reports. And like I said, feel free to email me or contact the CalSTRS GASB update mailbox if you guys have any specific questions, and we'll really work our best and do our best to respond as promptly as possible. Anyone else? Sorry, I have a cold and a cough. Okay, so last update. I know we've always talked about GASB 68, employers implementing it. So now we as CalSTRS, being an employer, we are also working on implementing GASB 68. So we are sharing your pain. We are actively working with the State Controller's Office, the Bureau of State Audits, and we're also trying to communicate with CalPERS and see how we can work together in implementing GASB 68. So far, we have very limited information in the state's net pension liability, so we can't really, we don't know yet how this will significantly impact our financial statements, but on our next EAC meeting, I'll definitely provide an update if we do get more information. That's all I have. Anyone has any questions? Violent reactions? No? Okay, thanks.
Mike challenge. But next is Bill Barrett to give you an update on the pension solutions. So Bill, can you introduce yourself and
Hello, everyone. I'm Bill Frericks. I'm on the Pension Solution Project. I'm the Employer Readiness Lead to get you all ready to use the new solution that's coming soon. We have a great announcement today about that. I'll let Jennifer introduce herself, and I'll also give you some more information about her, but a couple of announcements first. There's going to be 2 additional analysts joining me with Employer Readiness, and those should be filled very soon. Unfortunately, not quite yet. I was hoping I could announce them today, but I can't. But next time, and I'll bring them along as well so I can introduce them. The other important announcement is Jennifer Spangler is the new business lead for the Pension Solution Project. She replaces Kathy Kalis. If you remember Kathy, I think she came down here and spoke about a year ago or so. Jennifer comes over from our service retirement division. She's got a lot of experience. She's been with CalSTRS for over 10 years. I'm really excited that she's joining the team. And I'm gonna let her take the next slide.
So I just have one very important thing to say. We're really excited, as Peggy stated. The organization has spent multiple years working toward this goal. And at Thursday's board meeting, we were able to announce our intent to award to CGI Solutions and Technologies. And we have more communications coming out to you guys. But that is the big announcement that was made on Thursday. So I don't know if you guys were able to catch that. And Bill will continue giving you updates, obviously, through the process.
Okay.
CGI. Yes. So we're still in the protest period. I will mention that as part of the procurement. So that's pretty much the only information we can share at this point. The protest period will be ending shortly, and we'll be able to give you guys more details at that point. CGI.
You can Google them.
Yes.
Find out all you want to know. Yeah, we'll be sharing a lot more information about the vendor when we get past that protest period. There's a couple of things that need to take place before they actually come to CalSTRS. There's going to be some contract finalization that takes place, and that's probably going to take up to 1 to 3 months. And so they'll be on site later this spring. That's the plan. You can go sit down. I can call you back up if needed. A couple updates as far as what we're doing with employer readiness. The next forum meeting we postponed about a month or so. We wanted to wait until the procurement process played out, and also wanted to get those 2 analysts on my team first before we held the next employer forum. So we're targeting probably early March. So be looking for an announcement soon for the next employer forum, and we'll be able to share a lot more information during that meeting as well. The change readiness report is almost complete and should be distributed this month. If you remember, those of you that participated in the forums last spring when we traveled to Southern California, the Bay Area, and we held one here. We had those interviews where we asked you, I think it was 8 questions about how ready you are for this change. We gathered all those the comments and some suggestions, and that will be distributed soon. That report should be coming to you soon. The other thing that's going to be happening soon that I wanted to tell you about is a data collection analysis. And this is where we're going to start taking a look at all the data that we collect from you. So the F496, the defined benefit contribution file, the cash balance file, VDF, the MRD7, the address file. We're going to look at all of those files and the data we're currently collecting. And really what we want to look at and see is, is this adequate? Are we collecting the right data? Do we need to make changes to that? Do we need to collect additional data? Or maybe we can retire some of that. Maybe we don't need it. Like, for instance, I like to use, we collect the contribution rate on the F496. We don't really use that because we have those rates in a table in our system, and we use those rates to see that the correct contributions are being submitted. So that's an example of one I think we'll probably do away with. But we'll be looking at all those data fields. I want to let you know that we're going to vet any changes with the employer forum. So you'll be aware of what those changes are. We want to know, what impact is this going to have on you if we make changes? What's the feasibility of collecting new data that we're not collecting today? And what would be the, sort of the implementation timeline if we did want to collect new data? How long would it take you guys to get, to a point where you could get it to us? So you'll be involved with that. And that will really be used as a framework when we begin discussions with the vendor on, how we want to collect data and the data that we're going to collect from you. So that's coming soon. The high-level timeline is still pretty much the same from the last few times. Right now, we're in that procurement wrap-up. The vendor should be on board sometime this spring, later this spring. We're going to go through a project startup phase once they get here. That'll last a couple of months, and that will be where we develop some detailed project plans before we really start going. And later in the summer and the fall of 2015, we're going to go through requirements confirmation and conceptual design. This is really where the vendor is going to get familiar with CalSTRS. We're going to get familiar with the vendor. We're going to vet some of those requirements a little bit more. We'll be revisiting all the comments we collected from employers during those forums when we asked you for feedback on those requirements. So we'll be going through this phase that can take up to about 9 months. And then we will start getting into the implementation phases. And those implementation phases, again, they're going to be split up into multiple phases. They last approximately 18 months apiece. We're not sure how many phases, probably going to be 3 phases. And we're not sure what functionality is going to go into each phase yet. We'll probably know that pretty soon, though, and we'll be able to share that. So we're still looking at that phase implementation starting 2016 through 2019. And then project transition. So if you have any questions, you can always email me. Remember, pension solution 100%. You know, all those other questions about the credible comp regs. I know Cassie's here. She'll answer all those questions. They go to member account services and other items like that. So any questions for me? Francis, let me wait for the microphone.
Francis from LA County. Will the report source change?
What do you mean by report source?
Okay, cash balance, our districts report cash balance direct, so that's not going to go back to the county office. You're going to work direct with them to get the data reported?
Yes.
Is the county office going to be included? Because if there's a change in how payroll has to come out in order to get it reported, the county office has to make that change?
We're going to have to include you, right? Because you're the one that's producing the payroll for them, and they're producing the reports based on that. Absolutely, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I would just, we got a mic that works, so Ed and I are back in business. I would like to just note that while CGI is the vendor who is the primary contractor, they are subcontracting with another company. So if you look up CGI and you want to see what kind of pension solution they're offering, you won't find it on their website. They're subcontracting with a company called Sagitec, Sagitec, and they have a pension administration product called NeoSpin, and that's the product that we'll be looking to implement here at CalSTRS. But CGI is the prime contractor, and that's who will be our main point of contact for this. So I didn't want to, if any of you go back and try and look that up and you're not seeing a strong pension component in their online profile, that's why. So the name of that other company is Sagitec. And if there are no additional questions, then do we have Scott? Oh, we have Cassie. Oh, Cassie skipping ahead. Okay, so let's skip ahead to Cassie's presentation. And Cassie's going to be talking to us about a variety of things, including the credible compensation regulations to begin with. Okay.
I'm Cassandra Malbeck from Member Account Services, Cassie, and I'm just skipping the little process here. Not process, but I'm not sure where our next presenter is, so I'm presenting now. So I'm here to talk about the credible compensation regulations. I can tell you that since they've been effective January 1st, 2015, or even prior to that, we've done over 60 training sessions with employers. We've done training sessions at local events. We'll be in LA tomorrow with a few county offices, and at a CASBO event in Santa Clara tomorrow, or Friday. So we'll be in LA tomorrow, Friday, Santa Clara. We've been getting a ton of questions from employers, stakeholders, advocate groups, attorneys representing members and employers. So it's generated a lot of discussion, and that's kind of what we're doing. So I'm here if you guys have any questions. There was one question that came through. I can't remember which employer it was, but it came through asking about the piece when you have outgrowth activities, how to report them with what pay rate. So there was a law change that coincided with the regulations, and that was to the credible compensation earnable law, so 22115, and it's directing you guys when you have a member that's performing outgrowth activities, and it says to use the lowest pay rate for what they've earned in that year. So for example, if I'm a teacher, my pay rate is $50,000. I have an outgrowth assignment that I'm doing as well. The pay rate for that would be $50,000. In the question, it said something about there would be an inequity, basically. So if I'm a teacher, I'm doing an outgrowth, and I have a pay rate of $50,000, and Vina is doing the same outgrowth, and she has a pay rate of $70,000. Basically, the question is, what do we do? So you would report mine with the $50,000. You would report Vina's with the $70,000. And we understand that you would get different amounts of service credit, but that is the way that the bill was written. So that was a question that we got online. So I wanted to address that before I have other questions. So what else do you guys have for me?
Francis from LA County. At the last EAC meeting, the question came up with, for example, a substitute who may be hired to do coaching, but they don't sub before they actually do the coaching. How is a coaching assignment treated? And then a second piece to that was, if the person then subs midway through doing the coaching assignment, is that coaching assignment supposed to be split?
Okay, so for the first piece, I wasn't at the last EAC meeting, so.
Okay, the first piece was they hire a person as a substitute.
Right.
But they don't, that person
They're not
does not
performing
perform
credible
sub work,
service.
right. But they're doing coaching. So let's say they start coaching in September.
Okay,
And what was said at the last EAC meeting was that coaching assignment then would be treated as classified. But if the person then subbed, let's say in November,
yes.
and they're still doing the coaching assignment, that at the point they became a sub or started doing sub work, from that point going forward, then the coaching assignment becomes certificated. So in effect, the coaching assignment is split. Part of it is being reported classified, part of it is being reported certificated.
So I would agree with what you're explaining in the first statement, because the way that an outgrowth activity becomes creditable to CalSTRS is you have to be performing it in addition to performing credible service, because the outgrowth activities on their own are not credible service. So you first have to be performing credible service. So I first have to be teaching, counselor, something that meets the criteria of credible service in 22119.5. Then if I pick up an outgrowth activity, so I'm the yearbook editor, coach, I'm band leader, something other than what's described in 22119.5, that becomes credible by virtue of me performing credible service, if that makes sense. So if you're just starting off the year coaching and you are not performing any credible service, it can't get reported here because it's by virtue not creditable if it's an outgrowth.
But
Does that make sense?
They do perform credible service midway through continuing the coaching, then the coaching gets split. Or if,
Yeah.
or do you
Or
go
you
back
just
and, or
continue
do you go
reporting it
back?
to CalPERS. I mean, I would think that would be an option as well. No? You're looking at me like, no. Well, it has to be, how do you report it to CalPERS in the first place? It has to meet some sort of their criteria.
Past experience.
Oh, so you're
or
saying you
past
don't
practice.
report it to CalPERS?
Right,
in
past
the beginning.
practice
Okay,
was,
I misunderstood
the
what you
person was
said.
hired as, they're certificated, they were hired
Yes.
as a sub, and they're
Yes.
doing coaching. The coaching assignment is reportable to CalSTRS. That was past practice.
Okay, I misunderstood. I thought you meant you reported to CalPERS halfway and then CalSTRS.
No, that's what we were told at the last EAC should happen.
Okay, so I should not speak for CalPERS. I am not an
No,
employee of CalPERS.
This came from Peter.
But I should pull Peter up here then. Yeah, Peter's not in the room. So that would be factual. So if you're coaching in July and August and you're not performing credible service and you don't start performing credible service till September, then it's not credible to us until September.
Sorry, Teresa from Stanislaus County.
Yes.
So my comment was, so the football coaches that do conditioning with their teams during the summer, that's all they're doing. They were employed in the district last school year. They're on their summer break, but are being paid to do the coaching during the summer to get them conditioned for football to start first week of school. That's not reportable during the summer until they actually start their school year.
That is correct, yes.
Even if they taught, but even if they were teaching prior to that point, I mean, they're not in the same.
You mean if they were teaching like
If
the year
they
before?
taught in the prior school year,
Right, they put-
and
they
then
taught-
they're coaching in the summer,
Right.
wouldn't that still be considered an outgrowth? I mean, they are performing credible service, or they have been performing credible service.
I think that would be above my pay grade to make
Okay.
that decision.
Peter, is Peter in the room?
There's a guy in the audience that might be able to make that call.
Cassie, the comment at the last EAC meeting was
Yes.
that credible service had to be performed in the same year the outgrowth was being performed.
So I know that there was a lot of, I understood that there was a lot of questions about that as far as in the same year and the same month. And I know we want to provide more guidance on that within the law. So that is something we are doing. But as of right now, I'll let Peter answer that part.
In a straight reading of the regulations, that would not be credible, but we'll take a look at it. Maybe there is a way to look at it based upon if they had previously been in position, they're going to continue in that new position in September. This is just the outgrowth for the getting ready for the new football season. Let's take a look at it. So, potentially, it could be potentially case by case, but I think that generally, really, this person's continuing their assignment as a teacher, and they've always been the football coach. You know, I think we're trying to look at that. So let's take a look.
But I think it's safe to assume that somebody who has not yet performed credible service and is coaching is not performing credible service. So that one I think is much more straightforward. I think the one where they're bridging from one school year to the next, I think, is one that we need to take a look
We'll
at.
have to take a look at.
I have a question from the remote attendees, and it's from Nancy, and she wants to know if a substitute only works in August of the year and does not substitute in September, gets a coaching stipend in October but no substituting. Is the coaching stipend in October credible or not? Does that make sense? Do you want me to repeat it?
I'm not sure I quite followed that. So they're subbing in August, not in September, coaching in October.
Right.
Is it creditable?
But not substituting in October. Is it creditable?
I mean, I think it's like business as usual at this point. If you've been reporting, they started performing credible service. So they did perform credible service within that school year. They performed credible service in August and they're coaching in September. I would think that one would be credible. I'm looking at Peter. He's saying yes. So, I mean, it is, that's why we do want to provide more guidance around that piece, and we do plan to do that through legislation.
During the meantime, should we just report it creditable if that's the scenario?
The scenario that was just asked online.
While you are looking into this other question, are we safer to report the earnings as creditable until we get a solid ruling?
So I think it would depend on which scenario you have. If it's the scenario where you've performed credible service,
Yes.
and then let's say you haven't done anything for a couple months and then you pick up a coaching, I would say that's safe to report.
And should we follow the rule by fiscal year? So creditable service July 1, no more creditable service, and then you coach. Make it subject because you've started the school year off performing creditable service?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Oh.
A teacher at another district and is coaching only at a different district, is it reportable as classified for the district he is doing the coaching job only for?
So they're performing credible service in one district, coaching in another district.
Right.
I would say that that's not an outgrowth of that school, so I would say that the coaching is not creditable to CalSTRS. Vina has a question.
Veena from Orange County. Francis and some other people use the example when they are not working, let's say July and August, and they're going to work from September through. Districts normally, once they are hiring someone, they establish at that time.
In July, they established them in July.
Yeah, they establish the employee. They don't really then monitor month by month. They are established at one point, and after that, whether they are coaching or not coaching, or there is a break in between, or they are subbing. So I wish whenever you guys decide, it's a clear cut, not like case by case basis.
Yeah, I would like to provide that to you as well, not a case by case, so you guys
like
know.
for example, the impression had been they have to have a creditable service in the pay period at the same district if they have outgrowth. That's the way we understood now, but now it's kind of getting gray again.
And like I said, that's the kind of guidance we want to be able to provide, and we are working on that through probably through the legislation
and when you
process.
do that, if you keep in mind that district established as of that moment, and after then it's.
When you say establish, are you talking about
Means
establish
what
us
they're-
in CalSTRS system, or
I mean,
establish them as an
in our
employee
system
in your
and
system?
an
Okay.
employee,
Okay.
what
I-
they are going
okay.
to do, what their earnings will be, rate will be.
Okay.
After that, nobody monitors like, whether they worked this job this month or other job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sheila Walker with Tehama County Department of Education. I have a question on what you mean by lowest pay rate. The example you give is very clear cut. But what if you've got somebody performing a part-time employment that makes, their annual would be $50,000 if they're doing full-time. They sub-teach also, which is at a lower annual.
Yes.
So what's the lowest pay rate? I've been told by my representative that I shouldn't use the lower, like if the sub-teaching was an annual of $18,000, I shouldn't use that pay rate because that results in them getting higher service credit. So what do you mean by lowest pay rate?
So that's incorrect. You should use the sub rate. So whatever the member has, whatever the lowest rate is that member has earned within that year is the rate that you should be using for the outgrowth activities. So if a member happens to be having a part-time assignment, like let's say 5 different assignments, and the lowest pay rate they're being paid at is $18,000, that's the rate you would use for the outgrowth activity.
Okay, you need to let your member representatives know that.
Okay, so we asked the same question, and I'll just read the question as we submitted it. If the outgrowth activities are paid an hourly or daily basis, do we still use the employee's normal annual rate of pay, or do we calculate the pay rate using the hourly rate by the employee's hours and days worked? We gave examples.
So can I ask a clarifying question before you move on?
Sure.
So when you say the outgrowth has an hourly or daily rate, you've assigned a rate to that?
The district has.
Okay, so that's a little different. So, and that, if that's what you were asking, I did not catch that piece. If you, as a district, let's say you have the bottom of the step and column, and that's what you've assigned, like all your outgrowth. So let's say it's step A, and step A is $20,000, and all of your outgrowth has fit in that step A. You can no longer do that practice anymore.
Okay.
Does that answer? Is that the same question you had, Sheila?
Our subs are paid $100 a day.
But are they performing? So it's really on a member by member basis. It's not fit all categories. So if I'm your employee and I am working a part-time assignment at $40,000, and I also sub at $20,000, and I have an outgrowth, for me personally, you're going to report my outgrowth at the $20,000 pay rate. Now, if Teresa is doing something different and she's full-time, $60,000 is her pay rate, and she doesn't have any sub work or anything like that, and she's just full-time, Her outgrowth is 60,000. It's not step in column A because the law does not allow you to do that.
So I thought we were supposed to treat all the classes the same, and now we're treating them as individuals.
So for this outgrowth piece, the law gave very specific guidance on how to come up with a pay rate, because when we spoke with a lot of our employers when we were drafting these regulations, the feedback we got was, we can't come up with a compensation earnable, we don't keep track of the hours or days, we don't know if they're working Monday through Thursday or what it is. They get paid a flat stipend amount. Here's $3,000 to coach football or whatever the outgrowth activity is. So in response to that, CalSTRS said, okay, let us help with that. So we proposed this law, and the law passed to give guidance on what you can use for your compensation earnable. So we understand that there may be inequity as far as, you know, two individuals doing the same outgrowth and getting the same, a different pay rate. We do understand that.
Well, they're also getting different service credit.
Right.
In our case, the subs are not paid off the salary schedule. It's just $100 a day, and we have a calculation to come up with an annual. So their part-time may be off the salary schedule at $50,000, but that $100 is not related to that salary schedule, and it's not a flat amount.
So I would have to actually look at the salary schedule and see, and I can meet with you after this, and we can look at the salary schedule and see what to do in your scenario.
I'd like to clarify our question a little bit better. I actually sent this question to our analyst, and I gave her the example. If the employee were paid $45 an hour, because we have most of our districts do have hourly rates for things that the teachers can do, or if they were paid, say, $125 a day, as if they were subbing, do we calculate it by days and hours to get the annual pay rate? She said no. She said use the employee's normal annual pay rate. Don't use the calculated one at $45 an hour or $100 a day.
Okay, so there's two things that I want to stress. So number one, make sure it's an outgrowth, because the law was only specific as to the section of the law that's talking about outgrowth assignments. And number two, okay, what was my number two? It was, so the outgrowth assignment, and it sounds like in your district, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you guys have assigned hourly rates or pay rates for these outgrowth activities. For some. So like I said, because of the feedback we heard that we don't keep track of the hours or days for these flat stipend amounts that we pay these individuals. So if you pay them a flat stipend amount of $5,000, and you don't know if they worked 20 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours, that's why we provided guidance saying then use the lowest pay rate. So I would probably like to take a look and see what you've attached those hourly rates to. Maybe they are truly not outgrowth assignments.
But what we got, we also asked the question to our member analysts too, of what is outgrowth? And she specifically gave me the description from Ed Code that says an outgrowth of the instructional and guidance program of the school when performed in addition to other activities described in this section. And it was 22119.5.
Right. That is
And
what the
from
law
what
says.
we could get from what she told us is pretty much everything credible that a teacher is going to do is outgrowth.
So that's why I would like to look and see specifically what you're referring to, so that I can see if it would fall under an outgrowth activity, or it may just fall under credible service, and it's the rate that you've assigned, because it may have a full-time equivalent. So I would have to look to see. We can't give a run-on list, but what our representatives should do is say, what are you trying to report? And assist that way as far as if it's truly an outgrowth or if it's not an outgrowth. So I will go ahead and catch you afterwards too, and so we can.
I'd prefer a list though, because we're going to be contacting the analysts constantly, asking these questions over and over again, because you're doing it case by case or member by member.
Right, and
So-
we just unfortunately cannot give a list.
You're looking for a list of outgrowth activities?
Right. What do you constitute as outgrowth activity? It's a very broad statement, and no one's clarifying it for us. And
Well,
for one teacher, it's an outgrowth, and the next teacher, it's not. And
I'm not sure why that would be the case. If you got two teachers both doing the same thing, either it's outgrowth or it's not outgrowth. It's not the nature. I mean, it's not the nature of what they're otherwise doing that makes it outgrowth. It's a question of whether that activity itself is an outgrowth of the instructional program. And the problem is if we create a list, we're doing it. It's a regulation, and we're not going to. And we can't. I mean, this is what CalPERS does, where they create this list of what's compensation, and they got this laundry list that goes on for encyclopedias of what constitutes. And we're just, we can't anticipate the kinds of things that a school is going to do to start creating a list that's exclusive. So we just have to work with you to, use your judgment, and then we can provide whatever assistance that we can to provide. Yes, that's an outgrowth or not, but I'm not sure it should be that difficult to figure that out.
I can answer other questions. I want to see if there's any other questions other than out. I know that's a hot topic, but I just want to make sure if there's any other questions about the regulations, because I don't know what my time is here. I know Scott's dying to talk about direct reporting.
I'm Erin Graves with Sonoma County Office of Ed. My understanding of what you started out about outgrowth is that by itself it's not creditable compensation, like
Correct.
coaching, like what the activity, as you're saying, that you do doesn't require credential. So my question though is back to the hourly, is when we've had creditable things that they're doing that's creditable compensation that's paid hourly, we're using that hourly rate times the number of days in the school year times their hours per day, and coming up with that being their lowest pay rate. And I just want to make sure that that's still correct.
And that's for outgrowth activities?
No, that would be, to me, that's regular salary.
So you're just talking about
meets
regular
the
credible
definition of
service.
salary, is not the exception, being outgrowth.
Okay, so you're talking about with regular credible service, you want to make sure you're calculating the comp earnable correctly. So you're
So we're taking whatever that hourly rate is to
Okay.
perform creditable service,
okay.
multiplying it by the number of days in the school year by the number of hours in the day. So
you
just
come,
like
you
the
come up with like your daily rate or your hourly rate, and
you're
your
coming up with an
hours.
annual. Yeah. So that would be correct.
It sounds like what you're doing is correct.
Okay.
I can meet with you as well afterwards and make sure, but it's yeah, you would establish what the rate of pay is times the however many hours you're requiring them to work, or however many days you're requiring them to work, and you multiply the figure.
Just want to make sure somebody else had gotten some other information that it needed to be whatever the employee's lowest pay rate was, as opposed to doing that math.
Not if it's straight credible service and not an outgrowth assignment.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Vicki with Kern County. I have some districts that have only a teacher salary schedule.
Okay.
And then they also have counselors, or counselors is the only one I can think. Counselors, principals, assistant principals, that they consider them a class. So that class of people who are counselors, that is their job. They get paid off the teacher salary schedule, and then they get special comp based on this more money that they pay to counselors.
Okay.
But I don't see anywhere where that's okay. Do we need to now create separate salary schedules for separate classes of people?
So you have, let's say, so you're saying your counselors get paid off the same salary schedule as your teachers, and then let's say they get an additional 3% or a flat dollar amount, and that was reported as special compensation previously.
Correct.
So, right, it would not meet the criteria of remuneration in addition to salary. It really meets salary, but with that said, a district would need to pay increases on that total amount as well. So if you're on the salary schedule at $60,000 and you add another $5,000 on top of it, so it's $65,000, that really should be your pay rate, and you should be paying pay increases on that. If you for whatever reason get docked, you're docked on that total amount, because it really truly should be their salary.
Correct.
Is what it sounds like. It's really not. It doesn't meet the criteria of remuneration in addition to salary. It's not additional money without the performance of credible service.
Okay.
Does
So
that help?
They would need separate salary schedules then? And then that would be also increased by percentage if they were to
say they get retros or whatever,
They
on the
would
whole
s-
amount is going to be
That
increased.
factor would need to be added within the salary schedule. I don't know that I want to say they would have to create separate ones, but it would need to be factored into the salary schedule so that they would receive their pay increases on it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys.
Let her off too easy. Thanks, Cassie.